The Telltale Heart, Guided Close Read. Edgar Allan Poe dreamed of being a writer at a very early age. By the time he was 13, he had already written many poems. In fact, Poe's first book was a collection of poetry that he published in 1827 when he was only 18 years old. However, it was the publication of his poem The Raven in 1845 that made Poe famous. In a story told from a first-person point of view, the narrator, or the voice telling the story, is a character in the story. Reread lines 8 through 16. Explain how you can tell that this story is told from a first-person point of view. How does the use of a first-person narrator contribute to the development of suspense? Pause while you think. The narrator uses the first-person pronouns me, my, and I. The first-person narrator makes the tone conversational, as if the narrator is calmly telling why the idea of the murder is appropriate. This leads to immediate tension for the reader. An unreliable narrator is a narrator whose assessment of events cannot be trusted for some reason. Reread lines 45 through 52. Identify details in the text that suggest the narrator of this story is not reliable. Pause while you think. Textual evidence that supports an unreliable narrator includes: I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. I fairly chuckled at the idea. What is it about this narrator that makes him seem unreliable? Pause while you think. He appears to be mentally unstable. Repetition, or the use of the same word or words more than once, can be used to emphasize a particular idea and to help create suspense. Poe uses repetition often throughout this story. Reread lines 80 through 93. Identify 4 places where Poe repeats a word or phrase. Pause while you think. All in vain, to feel, little, stealthily are all repeated. What idea does the repetition of to feel emphasize? Pause while you think. Although the old man could not see or hear the narrator in the dark room, he could still sense that he was there. What impact does the repetition of the word stealthily have? Pause while you think. It creates tension by slowing the story's pace at the very suspenseful moment and emphasizing that the narrator is acting in a cautious, secretive way. Suspense is a sense of growing tension, fear, and excitement felt by readers. Authors often create suspense in a story by describing a character's anxiety or by using vivid language to tell about dramatic events. Reread lines 103 to 115. Find examples of the ways Poe creates suspense. Why do these phrases create suspense? Pause while you think. It increased my fury. I scarcely breathed. It grew louder, I say louder, every moment. This excited me to uncontrollable terror. The description of the narrator's anxiety heightens the reader's fear that he will go through with his plan to kill the old man. An unreliable narrator can't be trusted to give an accurate assessment of events. Reread lines 130 through 141. In this passage, how does the narrator try to convince readers that he is sane and reliable? What effect do the narrator's explanations have on the reader? Pause while you think. He points to his wise precautions in his concealment of the body as evidence of his sanity. His comments further suggest that he is unstable or mentally ill. Authors sometimes use italic type and repetition to emphasize a thought or an idea. Reread lines 170 through 178. Why is the description in lines 172 through 174 in italic type? Pause while you think. Poe wants to emphasize this idea that is repeated from lines 101 through 103. What does the narrator think the sound is? Pause while you think. He thinks it is the beating of the old man's heart. What is the likely source of the sound? Pause while you think. The narrator's own heart is the likely source of the sound.